Hello, friends. How y'all doing? Friends, today we're gathered to talk about theory. We're going to read books. We're going to have discussions and chat. I do want to make sure that y'all are clear on this. While I'm reading, I am not checking chat. I want y'all to know that. I have chat turned off, and I check chat every, maybe hour or so. So, it's not because I don't like you, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I'm trying to focus on the literature so I can read to the best of my ability. Nothing personal, just please understand that if I don't respond to you immediately, it's not because I'm ignoring you. I'm just trying to focus on the reading. I already see we got some people in chat, and I'm real glad that we got some friends who are returning. Thank you. You know, you've heard of The Conquest of Bread. I mean, this is like my fifth copy that I've ever bought and haven't given away yet. This is, I mean, you've heard of Angela Davis's, Our Prison's Obsolete. But have you ever read Captive Genders? Captive Genders is a fantastic book with a collection of other essays that we're probably going to get to in the future, because I mean, this book is fantastic. I've actually been looking around and reading little bits of other chapters that are involved in this, and this is like a goldmine of very, very documentable information that is, it's just several people's stories and accounts, and, critical analysis on the prison industrial complex and the transphobic nature of the police state. It's fantastic. I mean, they cover literally all different types of subjects. For example, one I particularly read on this channel previously, which was on the intersection of the military and prison industrial complex by Chelsea Manning, who was a whistleblower for the United States, assassinating innocent civilians during the War on Terror. And so she was sentenced to prison for releasing that information. And she finally got out. She also is a Twitch streamer now, and she does many other things, including engineering, I believe that's what she does. I honestly need to get more involved with Chelsea Manning's, like what she's up to these days. All I know is that she Twitch streams, and I check in every once in a while and say hello. Sometimes we raid into Chelsea when we are streaming with Tranarchist Catgirl HQ. By the way, I am going to be a Catgirl for the stream for people's amusement. I hope you guys enjoy that. I hope you guys enjoy having a Tranarchist Catgirl read you, Tranarchist queer theory, Tranarchist radical queer theory. We'll go with that. So, we're gonna, let me see, what were we doing last time? We were talking about building an abolitionist movement, and we had a lot of really good cases to back up the justification behind doing so in the previous read, which is why I would recommend you go check out part 1, because we did have some good times. I will say, though, I apologize for not giving a trigger warning before. I did not know it was going to get into that subject. What I could have done was maybe, every time I stopped and then read something new, I can check real fast, see if there's any keywords that pop out, and then I can give a trigger warning then. Last time it got into some CSA stuff, which is it was covering that, and it got really, from what I remember, it triggered one of the previous attendees in the audience. I didn't want to do that to you. That wasn't my intention. I wasn't trying to be shocking. I wasn't, and honestly, I like I said, I could have checked the paragraph before, diving in without considering who's listening, So that wasn't my intention to hurt you, and I apologize for doing that. I will make an effort to not put y'all in that situation again. I will warn you next time before I jump into that. There might be even times I'll just want to skip a part because it's pretty fucking awful, based on some things I've read, or maybe I've read it before, you know? Things like that. By the way, I have not read this before. I've not read a lot of these chapters in this book, and that's why I've been wanting to do this for streaming, because I like reading this stuff, and I like talking about it and giving some analysis on it. I also like knowing what you guys have to say sometimes. That's why I check in every once in a while. Anyway, so, like I said, this chapter is called Building an Abolitionist, Trans, and Queer Movement, and we pretty much read, like, the first part, which was, darn it, I'm sorry, there we go. I mean, like, we talked about, like, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and scapegoating, and, it was called How Did We Get Here? How Did We Get Here? And it's just, like, it pretty much laid out a lot of tactics that reactionary forces tend to use to justify its means, such as fear-mongering and scapegoating, and, claiming that racism no longer exists, and things like that. So now we're talking about, like, reclaiming a radical legacy. And I've actually, ever since I saw that chapter, I was really tired. Not chapter, the section, the title of the section. I was really tired, and I wanted to, like, go to bed. But another part of me really wanted to just keep reading, because I was like, holy shit, it was a really good build-up. And now we're gonna get on with reading it. But, like, you know, now we're gonna talk about building a radical legacy that, I mean, it could pose some really good ideas out there. It could also begin to help us think of ways we can build a radical movement in our own material conditions, which is why I'm particularly excited about this. So, I'd say let's get to it. Let's do it. Reclaiming a radical legacy. Despite the powerful and destructive impacts that the renewed forces of neoliberal globalization and the New World Order have had on our communities and our social movements, there are and always have been radical politics and movements to challenge the exploitation that the United States is founded upon. These politics have become developed in communities of color and in poor and working class, immigrant, queer, disability, and feminist communities in both colonized and colonizing nations. From the Black Panther Party in Oakland to the Zapatistas in the Chiapas to the Audre Lorde Project in New York, as the story of Stonewall teaches us, our movement didn't start in the courtroom. They started out in the streets. Informing both the strategies of our movements as well as our everyday decision about how we live our lives and form our relationships. These radical politics offer queer communities and movements a way out of the murderous politics that are masked as invitation to inclusion and equality within fundamentally exclusive and unequal systems. Sometimes sometimes these spaces for transformation are easier to spot than others, but you can find them everywhere. From the church halls to the lecture halls, from the lessons that our grandmothers to the lessons we learn surviving the world. From post-revolutionary Cuba to post-Katrina New Orleans. These radical lineages have nurtured and guided transformative branches of queer and trans organizing working at the intersections of identity and struggle for collective liberation. These branches have redefined what counts as queer and trans issues, losses, victories, and strategies, putting struggles against policing, imprisonment, borders, and globalization, violence, and economic exploitation at the center of struggles for gender and sexual self-determination. Exploding the false division between struggles for implicitly white and middle class sexual and gender justice and implicitly straight racial and economic justice, there is a groundswell of radical queer and trans organizing that's changing all the ground rules. You just have to know where to find it. In the chart below, which I will definitely show you in a bit, we have drawn out a few specific strands of these diverse radical lineages that have paved the way for this work. In the first column, we highlight a value that has emerged from these radical lineages. In the second column, we lift up the specific organization striving to embody these values today. We're going to learn a lot about queer history, folks. That sounds pretty based, if you ask me. So, yeah. I just want to remind you all, drink some water. Like, if you got water, drink it, because, someday Nestle's gonna try to get their fucking greedy ass, free market ass hands on that shit, and we're not gonna be able to have it anymore, so drink up. Pretty soon, Flint's gonna be, like, everywhere, just, like, because of the way these fucking greedy ass capitalists, like, fucking try to steal everything, They're good fucking crooks. Anyway, so... okay, so deepening the past of those who came before. So, radical lineage and then contemporary descendant. Okay, I see what is going on here. I'll give you a look at what I'm looking at right now. So it's like this. Hope that makes sense. So, I mean, there's probably some other examples on other pages too, right? Yep, there's just a bunch of other ones. We're going to talk about radical lineages and contemporary descendants, and we'll get into some good stuff. We're going to find out the good stuff. We're going to learn about the good stuff. The good stuff that they don't teach you in school, folks. They don't teach you this shit in school, because they're fucking scared to admit that, the United States lost the Vietnam War. Just saying. Anyway. Anyway, let's just read. So the radical lineage here is, as for the first one, it's basically liberation is a collective process. I mean, I can't liberate you all on my own. That's not something I can do. You can't liberate me all on your own. I don't think we can, individually claim freedom and then make that freedom for everyone, I mean, none of us are really like Monkey D. Luffy, but that goes into the whole, like, what is One Piece theory to begin with, and I don't want to dive into that right now, but I want to say that the One Piece, is some kind of form of anarcho-communism. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. Don't ask me. I'm just saying we can talk about it on another stream. But you know, we you know, it's like with the united strength of one, so the union makes us strong. I don't know if I said that right, but I was trying to remember how the song goes. I was like, because that's the point, right? Like, when we work together, we can achieve common goals, such as a better community effort on, making a sustainable community outreach to people who are in need. So I think, liberation is a collective process, and that's kind of what you need to keep an eye out for. So it says here, the conventional non-profit hierarchical structures, it's actually a very recent phenomenon, and one that is modeled off corporations. Radical organizations, particularly feminist and women of color-led organizations, have often prioritized working collectively, where groups' awareness, consciousness, and wholeness is valued over majority rule and individual leadership. Collectivism, it best takes up the concern of the few at the concern of the whole. For example, when one member of a group or community cannot attend an event or meeting because the building is not wheelchair accessible, it becomes a moment for all to examine and challenge ableism in our culture, instead of just dismissing it as a problem that affects only people who use wheelchairs. Yeah, I mean, and it's like, that's the thing, is that that's one of the things I never understood, was why they even have, elevated, you're on the ground level, why is it elevated? Never understood that. Maybe it has to do with the way the land is shaped. I don't know, I don't have the answers to that one, but it just seems a little weird that, some buildings in particular are, elevated, and you have to walk upstairs to get to the first floor. That just makes no sense. I don't know. I don't have the answers to that one. I also, don't have the answer to why there's no elevator in some places. Sometimes elevators just don't work, and sometimes I would just prefer to not walk down the stairs or up the stairs, Anyway, so the contemporary descendants of this would be the Sylvia. Okay, we'll go with Sylvia. The Sylvia Rivera Law Project, or SRLB, among many other organizations, have shown just how powerful working collectively can be. With their staff and volunteers, many people of color and majority trans and gender non-conforming governing collective, the SRLB is showing the world that how we do our work is a vital part of the work, and that doing things collectively helps us create a world that we want to see as we're building it. And that's kind of the thing. It's just that, if we are, helping one another, maintain a building space and a workspace that is, truly understanding of the fact that, trans and gender non-conforming voices matter more than just saying you got a trans token friend, It's just, that's why I don't really think that, having Chase Bank or Citibank saying that, like, trans rights and all that is helpful. I mean, sure, it'll piss off some, alt-right boomer or whatever, but, it's not gonna really do much. I think, like we need to see meaningful change, and it's just like, those corporations, they create the material conditions that we live in the first place, especially the banks I just mentioned. The banks, they are the ones who make the big ass loans, and they try to do that bullshit with it that they did in 2008. And they did it so that way, the fucking stock market would benefit them and not the fucking people who made those interest loans. They're very fucking predatory like that. So, yeah. So I'm having fun already so far. I hope you guys are having fun too. So, this one I think is an interesting title. It's a Radical Lineage called Trickle Up Change. I think I know what they're gonna say. They're gonna say that the hierarchy is bottom up. I never really explored the bottom up hierarchical class structure. I've been more interested in like a horizontal, class structure. But I don't know. I've actually been wanting to dive into that subject just a little bit more. We know that when those in power say they will come back for those at the bottom of the social and economic hierarchy, it will never happen. Marginalization is decreased when a part of a marginalized group makes it over the line into the mainstream, leaving others behind and reaffirming the status quo. We've all seen painful images of this in LGBT politics time after time. From the abandonment of transgender folks in the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, or ENDA, to the idea that gay marriage is the first step towards universal health care. Instead, we all know that freedom and justice for the most oppressed people means freedom and justice for everyone. And that we have to start at the bottom. The changes required to improve the daily material and spiritual lives of low-income queer and transgender people of color would by default include large-scale transformation of our entire economic, educational, and healthcare legal systems. When you put those with the few and the fewest resources, and those facing multiple systems of oppression, and the center of analysis and organizing everybody's benefits. So the contemporary dissent of that would be, looks like there's a bunch of bold in this, so. Queer for economic justice in New York City, and the transgender gender variant and intersex justice project in San Francisco are two great examples of trickle up change. By focusing on queers on welfare, in the shelter system, and in prison systems, these groups demand social and economic justice for those with the fewest resources and the smallest investment in maintaining the system as it is. there's a lot of organizations in your neighborhood that can, help you begin to learn about, where to begin in any journey where you explore your own sexuality or your own, journey being trans in any way, shape, or possible. Any identity that you have or that you look into, there are people like that as well. I used to live in Santa Clarita, and Santa Clarita is a very Blue Lives Matter city, and it also had a mass shooting. They didn't really know what the motive of the shooter was, but I feel like it was a little hidden intentionally for some reason. I feel like one of my theories would be that he was some guy in the alt-right. And, I gotta remind you all, this school shooting happened right across the street from my house, so I freaked the fuck out when that happened. Yeah, that wasn't fun at all. But it's just that neighborhood, it still had queer and trans folks. I've met so many people that you would never think you would meet in a neighborhood like that. And I wasn't really the social type either. It's just that I lived there for 8 years of my life, mainly in my adult life. And, it's just, that's just how life works, really. It's just that, they actually, well, and really, that's how the capitalist system fucking works. It's just that, there are queers in every community. It's just that not all of them are out, not all of them are public about it, not a lot of them are, even in a safe financial or economic space to be queer in the first place. So it's very difficult when you have, when you're in a shelter and they don't allow trans people in the shelter. I've done that before because, when I first came out as trans, I was I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, and I came out as non-binary, so I was still male presenting for a long time, but I would try to be more femme over time. But the thing is that as I began to become more femme, and then start HRT, I still wasn't a trans woman yet. I eventually became homeless, and I was in a shelter for a little bit, and as I continued to take hormones and live in the shelter, which, by the way, they can't know that you're taking a very specific kind of drug that has they haven't looked at or approved yet. The shelter that I was at, they were against, they did not let trans people in. They were specifically for, men. So that's why I was in there. And yeah, that was wild. That was a very wild beginning of 2020 for me. And then as the pandemic hit, shit got weird for me. And then here I am on the other side of the country. That's my life. So anyway, we got more parts on this chart here. I think it's interesting to discuss. It says here, be critical of all those welcome mats. That's an interesting way to phrase it. Learning from history and other social justice movements is a key principle. Other movements and other moments have been drained of their original power and purpose and appropriated for purposes opposing their principles, either by government working to dilute and derail transformation or by corporations looking to turn civil unrest into a fashion statement or both. Looking back critically at where other movements have done right and gone. Oh, and gone wrong. Okay, sorry. The chart's a little weird. Looking back critically at where the other movements have done right and gone wrong helps us stay creative and accountable for our communities and to our politics. Okay, there we go. My apologies on that one. Anyway, so the critical resistance is a great example of this commitment. In the group's focus on prison abolition, instead of reform, its members examine their strategies and potential proposals through the question, will we regret this in 10 years? This question is about taking a long-term view and assessing a potential opportunity, such as given proposal to improve or reform prisons or sentencing laws against their commitment to abolishing. It's not expanding or even maintaining the prison industrial complex. The message here is that even though it might feel nice to get an invitation to the party, we would be wise to ask about the occasion. That's such a really interesting way to word it. I like that. I never thought of it in that way. I remember there was this. There's a clip that I found, and I saved it. It's on a YouTube channel that it's in my other channels. It's called Death to the State. And there's a video in there where a cop is a bunch of cops are just kneeling down and they're just trying to what is it? They want to pretend they're showing respect to the protesters, so the protesters are like, yeah, that's awesome, yeah, and then the cops get up and they start shooting the protesters with rubber bullets. You know what I'm saying? That's just some bullshit right there, That's some bullshit. For us and by us, the Radical Lineage says, the leadership, wisdom, and labor of those most affected by an issue should be centralized from the start. This allows those with the most to gain from social justice to direct what that justice will look like, and give allies the chance to directly support their leadership. Contemporary defense, contemporary descendant, there we go. Fierce in New York City is a great example of this principle. By building the power of queer and trans youth of color to run campaigns campaigns organize one another and challenge gentrification and police violence, Fierce has become a powerful force that young people of color see themselves in. At Fierce, it is the young people who directly face the intersections of ageism, racism, xenophobia, homophobia, and transphobia, who identify what the problems, priorities, and strategies should be, rather than people whose expertise on these issues derive from advanced degrees or other criteria. The role of people not directly affected by issues is to support the youth in manifesting their visions, not to control the political possibilities that they are inventing. I got a lot to say about this. First of all, teachers should always be unionized as long as we have a capitalist system, because we need teachers to be well paid. And if teachers ain't well paid, then what good is the education the kids are gonna get? We also need to be able to provide not only a good education for kids that is much more fulfilling in life, such as teaching them life skills instead of how to equate how big a fucking circle is or whatever. You teach them geometry. I'm just saying, like, we can do better than this. We can build a better education system. If they stop gutting the education system, we can abolish the fucking SAT bullshit that they got going on there. That shit is just like, that shit reinforces like the racist education system as a whole, because it's just like people like communities that are primarily run by settlers, they primarily give a better education to their children and students, but like in communities of color, they primarily deal with a lot more than just like a racist education system. It's also that a lot of people end up having their fathers and mothers killed because the police are literally fucking trigger happy. So you have children with fatherless people, and I always hear this bullshit argument from people, these bootlickers. They go, well, what if they just complied? You know what? Like, Toledo complied. It took the officer 0.008 seconds to just pull the trigger. You get these fucking QAnon conspiracy butt faces, they're always like, oh, these pedophilic, satanic cabal run by George Soros or whatever, we gotta stop their child sex trafficking ring and whatever. And I'm just like, look no further than Matt Gaetz. You got the culprit right there, You got it. He's right there. He's right in your face. Doesn't seem like you guys care though. Seems like you're using the word pedophiles to just sort of like, scapegoat maybe, some anti-Semitic slurs, like, the right wing does not give a fuck about children. I should not have brought that up again. I'm so sorry. I'm very sorry. I should have. Okay, I'm very sorry. I should have given a trigger warning again. I'm very sorry. I know what I did was not right. I need to be careful with that. I'm very sorry. Sorry about that. I did not mean to do that and to make you jump into that. I think what I'll do is I'll probably I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure this out on a stream. I'm very sorry. Anyway, so let's practice what we preach, also known as praxis. Yeah, we're getting to the good stuff here. This idea strives for the alignment of what we do, why we're doing it, and how we do it. Not just in our formal work, but also our daily lives. It goes beyond the campaign goals or strategies in our organization, and includes how they are organized, how we treat one another, and how we treat ourselves. And that's really like the most important part, is treating yourself with respect, right? You know, remembering what you need, and, you know, trying to live the best life you can, you know? If we believe that people of color have the most to gain from the end of racism, then we should support and encourage people of color's leadership in fights to end white supremacy. And for a fair economy and an end to the wage gap, people in our organizations should get paid equally, regardless of advanced degrees, and our working conditions and benefits should be generous. If we support a world in which we have time and resources to take care of ourselves, as well as our friends, families, and neighbors, we might not want to work 60 hours a week. I mean, that's just the straight up truth right there. I mean, I don't want to work 60 hours a week. I want to spend time with my grandpappy and my grandmammy. You know, like, I don't have that time anymore. Well, I never really did anymore, you know, like, and plus I don't live anywhere near them anymore. But I do call them at least once a week. So, yeah, I do that. So you can't say I never call grandma. But, like, that's the thing, it's just that if we have shitty working conditions, you know, that primarily use up all of our labor power, you know, to squeeze every little last drop of profit and resources that they can extract from us, then we're gonna fucking die at some point. You know, we're disposable. You know, that's kind of the problem. We're all disposable in the capitalist framework, and that's what they don't teach you in school, is that people and workers are disposable in the capitalist system. The capitalist system will invade other people's land to extract resources, putting that country at risk of either military intervention or environmental catastrophe. And then, like, you got the fucking, you know, bosses that use up the workers' labor so excruciatingly, like, to the point to where they actually manipulate how you get paid. For example, there's a policy where they don't want you discussing how much you get paid with each other. But why would they not want you to do that? Well, it's because they don't want you to be able to know how much they get paid, because you might be getting paid unfairly. There's a lot of people who I worked with throughout my life who worked far less hours and made far more money and did far less harder work than I did while I worked there. I remember sweating my butt off, and, like, you know, there was this one particular guy that worked, and he was like higher up on management, and it was like he just came to, like, you know, show off his girlfriend. Like, I don't know, it's just weird. It's just like he barely did anything, like, at all. He's just like a fucking dirty ass fucking capitalist. It's fucking bullshit. Fucking bullshit, I say. It's bullshit. Bullshit. By the way, just a word of advice: don't ever play Streets of Rage 1. If you get that game, there's a designated button to call the police, and you're basically, and sometimes if you're not good, there's a little bit of a lesson behind that. You know, if you're not that good at the game, you can call the police and use the police's power as much as possible to just blaze through the game. So you can't abuse it that much. I mean, like, you have it for every one level or every time you die, basically. So pretty much, like, if you rely on the police, you can almost beat the game, but you can't beat it on the last level with the police, you know? So you gotta be creative with that, so that's why you gotta get the second player, and have the second players join you, and, you know, do some mutual aid and kick some fucking butt. Now, get this game instead, because there's no police in this one, no cops, and if you get Streets of Rage 4, you'll get to beat up cops in a video game. Isn't that great? Didn't we discover something new while reading theory today, folks? I hope you guys are having a great day. Let's continue. Alright, we're gonna go up until here, and then we're gonna read chat. Okay, cool. I think we're making good time, though. An inspiring example of praxis, we're going to talk about praxis again, can be found in the work of Southerners on Newgrounds. I guess we're not talking about the website Newground, like the Flash animation website. We're not talking about that. It's also called Song, so I will just use that. So, based in Atlanta, Georgia, Song strives to integrate healing, spirit, and creativity in their work, organizing cross race, class, gender, and sexuality to embody new and old forms of community reflective of our commitment to liberation. Song and other groups show that oppression is traumatic and trauma needs to be addressed, acknowledged, and held both by individual and groups of people. If trauma is ignored or swept under the rug, it just becomes a resentment, chaos, and divisive. We are all whole, complex human beings that have survived a great deal of violence to get to where we are today. Our work must support our full humanity and reflect the world we want to live in. You know, one thing I've been kind of trying to do less is use, like, ableist slurs to describe, like, people that I don't like. For example, I've been trying not to make fun of, like, rednecks, you know, based on, like, you know, the uneducated redneck caricature, if you will. There are a lot of rednecks who are very well educated and are also very queer and trans, you know. I know quite a few, and I think, you know, to kind of invalidate those people too is a little disingenuous, you know. In fact, it's also even performative in a way. I mean, I get, like, there's a resentment towards that culture because, you know, it is based in white culture. And white culture is, you know, something that you should definitely unabashedly fucking question at every twist and fucking turn. But it is also to be recognized that a lot of people in rural areas, they tend to get subjected to, you know, like, right-wing media and right-wing conspiracy talking points through the mainstream media, in fact. You know, you can get, I mean, you used to be able to get, like, Rush Limbaugh, just, like, spouting racist shit in your ear and just being like, that was like your normal everyday radio consumption. Meanwhile, you had Alex Jones, you know, talking about how the frogs are, you know, turning gay from some weird shit getting in the water. He would also talk about bone broth. He griffed with like a bunch of llamas, and he said some shit about 9/11 a few times, and I don't know, he's some weird weird dude. He's a weird dude. He's a, like, it's okay to say weird. I don't want to call him stupid. That's the thing. He's not stupid. He knows how to manipulate people. You know, just because you're not stupid, don't mean you're not ill intent. You know what I'm saying? That makes sense. But at the same time, it's just like the people who receive this media. I can't say they're not bad people. That's not what I would say. I would say that they're subjected to fascist talking points through the mainstream media pretty easily in, you know, the free market of the corporate world. You gotta also remember that a few companies really own the media right now. It's been a consistent monopolizing trend in the media for over the past 60 plus years. So it used to be like 56 or something like that owned the media, and now it's like 6. I can probably count them: General Electric, Fox, News Corp, Disney, Viacom. Did I name them all? I don't know. I feel like there's one more. Time Warner, there we go. Yeah, I had to think about my hometown Burbank for a second. That's how I got that one. I was like, I know some of them are from my hometown. Looking at you, Mickey Mouse. Looking at you, Iwerk. Looking at you, Walt Disney. Anyway, so these companies own like 90% of the media. Is what I'm trying to tell you. Like we went over just a few, right? And that's a kind of like a warning sign. I mean, that maybe like we're having kind of like an oligarchy in, you know, media consumption. You know, like we get our media from a very, you know, worrying few, you know, people who have a lot of money, and they get to decide like what says what or who says what. You know, sometimes you get some nuggets in the rough, or you get, what I meant to say is sometimes you get some diamonds in the rough with some good entertainment or some good coverage on something. But even then, like, it doesn't really last too long on the air, and usually, like, they are forced to cover it. For example, there's been times when CNN would air a false story, and then people who were at the event would further correct CNN, and then they had to change the story within an hour later. You know, I believe there's been stories about, like, you know, fucking cops shooting rubber bullets at protesters, and then CNN, you know, reported it that way. But then, like, you know, protesters there have reported, like, and showing pictures of actual bullets that were being fired, and then CNN had to change the story. That shit happened in the 90s. The 90s during the WTO uprising in Seattle. That was what was it? Hold on. It was, I want to say WTO. It might have been that, but it's more like the Seattle, what was it, like the G20? Like, I don't remember. I don't quite remember. It was like the International Monetary Fund, and I think the United Nations were in there, and I don't know. I haven't looked that deep into that part of the history, to be honest with you. All I remember is that people kept saying, "Oh, them Antifa, they're going around with their black bloc and throwing, you know, fucking bricks in the Starbucks. You know, what are we gonna do? You know, the fucking windows are gonna be in major pain. This is genocide to all windows. We gotta stop that shit." You know, just like man, I don't know. Gotta protect the windows. I don't know, I'm sorry. We actually might finish this chapter today. We are gonna take a break after I finish reading this part, though. And when I say break, I mean it's like I'm gonna read chat and talk to you for a few minutes. So, real safety means collective transformation. Oppressed communities that have oppressed communities that have always had ways to deal with violence and harm without relying on police, prisons, immigration, or kicking someone out, knowing that relying on those forces would put them in greater danger. Oppressed people have often known that these forces were the main sources of violence that they have faced. The Central Asian... Oh, okay. Trigger warning, we're gonna get into some heavy stuff. Gonna give you a minute there. I tried to catch it this time. Okay, just making sure you're ready. I will put a thumbs up after that. I'll put a thumbs up when I'm done. The criminal punishment... Wait, no. Okay. The central agent of rape, abuse, murder, and exploitation, the criminal punishment system, has tried to convince us that we do not know how to solve our own problems, and that locking people up and putting more cops in our streets are the only ways that we can stay safe from healing from trauma. Unfortunately, we have often lacked other options. Many organizations and groups of people have been working to interrupt the intergenerational practices of intimate violence and sexual violence, hate violence, and police violence without relying on the institutions that target us, warehouse, kill, and shame us. We're done. We're done with that part. I will try to give another warning out. I'm very sorry we didn't get it before, but I'm glad I got it this time. Alright, let's do this. So the contemporary dissent to that is groups like Central Intervention and Generation 5 in Oakland, California, committees against rape and abuse in Seattle, Washington, and Audre Lorde's project Safe Outside the System, SOS Collective, have been creating exciting ways to support the healing and transformation of people who survived and caused harm, as well as conditions that pass violence down from one generation to another, because violence touches every queer and every trans person directly or indirectly. Creating ways to respond to violence are transformative and healing instead of oppressive, shaming, or traumatizing. It's a tremendous opportunity to reclaim our radical legacy. We can no longer allow for our death to be the justification for so many other people's death through policing, imprisonment, and detention. Locking people up, having more cops on the street, or throwing more people out will never heal the wounds of abuse or trauma. Alright, so we're gonna take a short break. I want to read what your comments say. Give me a second to stretch, and I recommend y'all stretching too. Oh, okay. Sorry. I just wanted to stretch for a second. I hope y'all did that too. I'm gonna read the chat. Oh, looks like there's a lot of people in chat. Alright. Let's see. Hello. Hello, Tempest. Good to see you again. I hope you're doing well. I'm confused. what do you want to abolish? We talked about this last time. We're trying to abolish, like, the state, pretty much. But we're also trying to identify, like, the intersections that support the state, such as the capitalist infrastructure that, also perpetuates, different intersections of oppression, such as racism, sexism, transphobia, misogyny, ableism, all these different things that segregate people and make us divisive and pits us against each other, creates like a class system that is antagonistic towards one another. We're trying to abolish that, and we're trying to direct our attention towards multiple sources of these intersections of oppression. So that's why we're pretty much like we're advocating for the abolition of the state and the abolition of the capitalist system. And I mean, I don't know if you can see it back there. Yes, Black Trans Lives Matter, but also abolish the police state. There we go. I hope that makes sense. I hope you're still watching, Zen. I feel like I've seen you a long time ago, actually. You look very familiar. I don't know. Tranarchism is based. Thank you, I agree. Alone, one is weak. Their strength is in the whole. Monkey D. Luffy based? I don't know. I mean, Monkey D. Luffy is pretty based. One Piece is pretty based too. I mean, I've always liked One Piece ever since I've learned about it. I haven't watched a lot of One Piece or read a lot of the manga lately. I ended on 912, so you can figure out where I am there. I don't know, like, Wano's not interesting to me. Like, Whole Cake wasn't interesting. Dressrosa really drained the fuck out of me. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was a little much. And all of this is called the New World. I don't know. It just doesn't really rub me the right way. It's not as good as it used to be. I kind of liked when, like, each little arc had, like, more big plot lines that, like, involved its own world. I know they still kind of do it that way, but I don't know, something about calling it, like, the New World, it's like a single arc. I don't know, something about that just doesn't feel right to me. It feels like they're gonna end the series with the New World, pretty much. Anyway. Hello, Miss Danger. I hope you are feeling okay. I hope we haven't triggered you again in this stream so far. I just want to make sure that that wasn't a thing that we did previously. We are taking a break, though. Let me see what else. Oh, and it's me, Fish and Bread. I knew who you are, Tempest. I remember. I know both your usernames. I remember both your usernames. I also remember your personal name. I won't say it, but you have shared it before. Anyway, love the cat ears. Thank you. It's my roommates. I don't know if I'm gonna keep them or not. It depends on. I'll have to ask them before I move out. At some point. Whenever I do move out. Yeah. Just waking up from a nap. That is pretty tight. The state can keel over and D. I think I know what you mean. Also, I have been reading how the Irish became white. Okay, I've never heard of that book before. I mean, I think I can understand like what the topic would be about though, but I've never read that book before, so feel free to talk about it in my DMs if you're interested. If you want another excellent anarchist pirate anime, I cannot praise Endless Orbit SSX enough. It is the sequel series to Arcadia of my youth in the 70s, and it is amazingly progressive for its time. I gotta check that out. You have mentioned that to me before. I am actually pretty interested. Would you also recommend Arcadia of My Youth to be something I should check out too? That is pretty interesting. Is there subtitles to it? Is it dubbed? I'd like to know that. No, it was good. Thank you for the trigger warning. It helped less for a bit. That's good. Glad to see. We did the right thing for you. Anyway. Alright. I'm gonna go back to reading for a bit. Thank you for chatting with me, and I do appreciate you hanging out. Just one last thing, and then I'll go back to reading. If you want to help support me, I have a lot of things I need to do right now. Like, for example, I need to get my ID for the state that I live in, and I gotta hopefully change my name and my gender marker. I'd like to be able to do that. You can help me by using the links in the description. They will provide you with my music. You can buy my music. You can also go on my fan page. I'm gonna leave it at that. We're gonna move on from that though. Just saying, I need the money because I could always use more money to survive because I'm very broke and I need to get some things done. Not even just that, but also I need to get health insurance. I applied for the health insurance. I'm hoping to get it. I'm gonna work my ass off to get it. So anyway, Arcadia. Was that my nose? Hello? It might be the cat. Anyway, Arcadia of My Youth is beautifully animated and a great setup for the series, but isn't necessarily required, but it helps and are available subbed and dubbed on Prime right now. Yucky, I know. Okay, well, I'll find a way to watch it. That sounds real cool. Thank you. That sounds real tight. Matthew, you're late, but you know what? I'm glad you came. I'm glad you came, Matthew. You did miss... I don't know if you watched part 1 yesterday, Matthew. You never told me you did. We're reading Building an Abolitionist Movement. That is also radically trans and radically queer. So, we're gonna actually dive into the next section. Anyway, I'm gonna close the chat for now. You guys can still talk, but I won't be reading what you guys say. So that's why I'm closing it, so I can focus on this. Alright, so the next section we're gonna be reading is called We Refuse to Create Deserving versus Undeserving Victims. It looks like these are principles, basically. Like principles and lessons and values that will, that are I guess kind of essential to building a prison abolitionist movement, right? So we refuse to create deserving versus undeserving victims. So let's do this. Although we understand that transgender and gender non-conforming people in prison, jail, and detention centers experience egregiously and often specific forms of violence, including sexual assault. Sorry. Take a second. I'm so sorry. There's actually quite a bit of this in here. Yeah, okay. There's a bit of it in here. You might want to take a second to step out. I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to give a warning on this one. Okay. Anyway, sorry. I'm very sorry. Including sexual assault, rape, medical and neglect, and discrimination and humiliation based on transphobic norms. We recognize that all people impacted by the prison industrial complex are facing severe violence. Instead, of saying that transgender people are the most oppressed people in prison, we can talk about different forms of violence that people impacted by the prison industrial complex face, and how those forms of violence help maintain the status quo of common sense that the real bad people, the rapists, the murderers, the child molesters, in some cases, now the bigots, and I mean, like, let's be real here, it's really the bigots that are all of these horrible fucking things, deserve to be locked up. Seeking to understand the specific arrangement that caused certain communities to face particular types of violence at the hands of police and in detention can allow us to develop solidarity around shared and different experiences with these forces and build effective resistance that gets the root of these problems. Building arguments that trans people as innocent victims, while others are cast as dangerous and deserving of detention, only undermines the power of a shared resistance strategy that sees imprisonment as a violence, dangerous tactic for everyone it touches. We know that the push for hate crime laws as the solution to anti-queer and anti-trans violence will never actually address the fundamental reasons why we are vulnerable to violence in the first place, or why homophobia and transphobia are encouraged in our cultures. Individualizing solutions like hate crime laws create a false binary perpetrator, or like a victim and a good and a bad, or a bad and a good people, without addressing the underlying systemic problem, and often strengthens that problem. In place of this common sense, we understand that racism, state violence, and capitalism are the root cause of the violence in our culture, not individual bigots or even prison guards. We must end the cycle of oppression, being pitted against one another. I wanted to offer something to you guys. I want to know what your thoughts would be on this. What if I started reading like fiction or like science fiction? Like, what would you guys want me to read? I mean, I was thinking like I could do a little bit of reading like fiction and science fiction each time. I don't know if I'd be able to read like a whole book on stream though. I also don't think I would want to do like a series of the same book on stream. I think like it would be, I like to read books where like they have like short stories and they're like a few pages long. So give me something to read on that like kind of accord. I can also read some poetry. Actually, I do have poetry somewhere in this room. I can read sometime as well. Poetry is a lot of fun to read. It's fun to sort of not like just completely be reading like dense literature about, you know, political theory and stuff like that. Like, it would be nice to discuss like, you know, the ideas that some books have that maybe are not really contemporary to leftism, but, you know, can also benefit the struggle for, you know, leftist unity and also like leftist revolution. You know, that's just some things I thought about that we can maybe further go into. think someone said maybe Mark Twain is a socialist. I don't know if he would be. I don't know if I maybe like reading Dr. Seuss books. So I don't know. You'll have to tell me. Tell me some of your favorites. We're gonna continue reading though. So the second part here is we support strategies that weaken oppressive institutions, not strengthen them. That's pretty bold. I like it. Short to the point. Very crystal fucking clear. And by the way, I hope now you're understanding to the. I think your name was Zen. I hope you're understanding what we're basically talking about. If you don't get it, I'm not gonna hold it against you for not understanding. You're also welcome to ask everyone else in the chat if you're interested. Like what their interpretation of it are. What we're discussing. It's not like I'm the great big, bury your brain that holds all the knowledge or whatever. I don't claim to be that. Like a lot of people in chat have their own, good interpretations of what we're discussing, and some of a lot of them come from different backgrounds and different walks of life. So check out some of their analysis on it too. I think talking to people is a better way to learn theory and just to learn what revolutionary and radical organizing and activity and liberatory politics. I think that's the best way to get your understanding of the world in that respect. Because, when you just talk to people, whether you agree with them or not, you're getting some kind of class analysis on the whole thing, and it's just because, they don't agree with Medicare for all, it doesn't mean, they're not, it doesn't mean, they haven't themselves been subjected to, denial of Medicare, or they haven't, been able to, get to see a doctor for a very specific thing that needs to be taken care of. It's just you get to understand how they came to that conclusion. You gotta think of it dialectically, and you then understand why the reactionary behaviors and forces are circulating in that community, and then you kind of go from there. That's always been my approach in life. I've had a little success rate here and there. I'm mainly not very good at socializing, folks. I'm not very good at talking to people. Especially when it comes to my hearing loss. So I don't know. This is my way of doing it, I guess, right? So we can respond to crises that are in our community by we are facing right now, while refusing long-term compromises that will strengthen the very institutions that are hurting us. As more and more awareness is being raised about the terrible violence that transgender and gender non-conforming people face in prisons, jails, and detention centers, some prisoner rights and queer and trans researchers and advocates are suggesting that building trans-specific prisons or jail is the only way that imprisoned transgender and gender non-conforming people will be safe in the short term. I've never heard that outrageous claim before, and that just sounds bananas, honestly. Particularly in the light of the dangerous popularity of gender responsive among legislators and advocates alike, we reject all notion that we must expand the prison industrial complex to respond to immediate conditions of violence. Funneling more money into prison building of any kind strengthens the prison industrial complexes death hold on our communities, we know that if they build it, we will fill it. And that getting trans people out of prison is the only real way to address the safety issues that trans prisoners face. We want strategies that will reduce and ultimately eliminate the number of people and dollars going into prisons, while attending to the immediate healing and redress of individual imprisoned people. Fire to the prisons, folks. Fire to the motherfucking prisons. Having Derek chauvinist, whatever, I don't know. That motherfucker, like, having him go to prison, he's getting the easy way out. I mean, really, like, he ain't really doing much for us. He's not helping us. In fact, that's helping the prison industry make more money. You know, and it also just, it translates to legislators that we need more cops on the street. You know, because, like, you know, if we have more people in prison, especially a police officer in prison, you know, there's just going to be more cops to hire on the street, you know? And that's fucking dangerous, folks. That's fucking dangerous. We must defend... Whoa, I went ahead of myself. We must transform exploitative dynamics in our work. A lot of oppressed people are hypersexualized in dominant culture as a way to create them as a threat, a fetish, or a caricature. Transgender women, black men, Asian and Pacific Islander women, to name a few. Sorry I butchered that sentence there. I don't know what happened. Despite often good intentions to raise awareness about the treatment of transgender and gender non-conforming people in prison, we recognize that much of the public education work around these issues often relies on sexualization, voyeurism, sensationalism, and fetishization to get its points across. In general, there is a focus on graphic depictions of people's bodies, specifically the genitals. Now this is getting triggering for me to read. I mean, I'm gonna finish it, but holy fuck. I'm letting you know, like, it's getting heavy in here. Sexual violence and humiliation they have faced. Okay. Imprisoned people who are usually represented as black, and transgender people who are usually represented as transgender women of color in this context, have long been the target of voyeuristic representation from porn movies that glorify rape in prison to fetishizing human rights research. Jesus fucking Christ. I'm sorry, this is really hard to read sometimes. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, I've seen that shit too. It's so fucking disgusting. Like, it's... I'm like utterly speechless about that whole thing. It's just, I don't know what to fucking say. I'm just like so fucking angry at that. Like, I'm like a whole other level of angry, you know? Like, I'm like biting my tongue really hard too. And it's just, I don't want to fucking say something that'll incriminate me, but fucking those people be damned, you know? Like, Jesus Christ. I'm trying to keep it chill here too, but it's just like, when I hear shit like that sometimes, that just makes me fucking angry. It just makes me real fucking angry, folks. And when you have that, like, juxtaposed with, like, you know, people debating as to whether or not children should have the right to be trans, and, you know, what kind of damage that'll do to trans people, you know, pairing that with, like, you know, what I just described a minute ago, it just shows the state doesn't give a fuck about trans people. That's kind of the whole dealio. It's just like, transphobia ain't, like, you know, ain't gone yet, folks. We got a long fight to go. We got a long fight to pull through before we get to the anarchist, you know, communist world that we want to see, you know. Free estrogen for everyone. Estradiol and Spyro, and we'll put the progesterone in the water in the drinking fountains at the park. Oh yeah, it's just like, hey, what's your plan for today? Oh, I'm gonna go walk to the park and have some water and come back. I mean, just take my usual dose of estradiol water. That would be so nice. There's a little spot on my hand. I think it's probably because of like a bug bite or something. Could have been a bug bite. I don't know. So, I think I'm gonna skip this part. I mean, it's a little much for me. If you all can forgive me on that. It's not that much longer. I just really don't want to bring those feelings up again. That makes sense. So we're gonna go to the next section over. It's just right underneath it. It says, we see ending trans imprisonment as part of the larger struggle for transformation. Let me get a quick glance at this. I think it's okay. Yeah, I'll check the other page in a second. We're not that much farther from the end of this chapter as a whole. So, like, this will be the last part of this two-part series that we're doing here. Okay, so we see ending trans imprisonment as part of the larger struggle for transformation. The violence to transgender people, significantly low-income transgender people of color face in prison, jails, and detention centers, and the cycle of poverty and criminalization that lead to so many of us to imprisonment is a key place to work for broad-based social and political transformation. There is no way that transgender people can ever be safe in prison as long as the prison exists, and as scholar Fred Motten has written, as long as we live in a society that could even have prisons, building a trans and queer abolitionist movement means building power among people facing multiple systems of oppression in order to image a world beyond mass devastation, violence, and inequity that occurs within and between communities. We must resist the trap of being compartmentalized into issues and priorities, and sacrificing a broader political vision and movement to react to the crisis of the here and now. This is the logic that allows many white and middle-class gay and lesbian folks to think that marriage is the only important and pressing LGBT issue, without being invested in the real goal of ending racism and capitalism. Struggling against trans imprisonment is one of the key and the many key places to radicalize queer and trans politics. Expand anti-prison politics and join in the larger movement for racial, economic, gender, and social justice to end all forms of militarization, criminalization, and warfare. So the last part we got right here is I think it poses a very interesting question. And I think it's a very honest question. And I think it's a good way to wrap this whole thing up. It's about roughly a page and a little bit more than that. So let's just blaze through it. The name of this section is simply called "So You Think We're Impossible?" It's an honest question. Let's discuss this. This stuff is heavy, we realize. Our communities and our movements are up against tremendous odds and have inherited a great deal of trauma that we are already struggling to deal with. A common and reasonable response to these conditions is getting overwhelmed, feeling defeated, losing hope. In this kind of emotional and political climate, when activists call for deep change like prison abolition or an LGBT agenda centered around prison abolition, just want to make sure you knew it was there was an explicit direction to gasp right there. So I wanted to make sure you knew that I wasn't just being hyperbolic for no reason. Our demand gets called, impossible, and idealistic, or even divisive. You know, it's so much for the tolerant left. Oh no, whatever. As trans people, we have been hearing this for ages. After all, according to our legal system, the media, science, and many of our families and religions, we shouldn't exist. Our ways of living and expressing ourselves break from such fundamental rules that systems crash at our feet, close their doors to us, and attempt to wipe us out. And yet we exist, continuing to build and sustain new ways of looking at gender, bodies, families, desire, resistance, and happiness that nourish us and challenges expectations. In the age when thousands are murdered annually in the name of democracy, more like military intervention is what I'd call it, millions of people are locked up to protect public safety, and LGBT organizations march hand in hand with cops in pride parades. Being impossible may just be the best thing we've got going for ourselves. Impossibility may very well be our only possibility. What would it mean to embrace rather than shy away from the impossibility that our way of living, as well as our political visions, what would it mean to desire a future where we can't even imagine, but that we are told couldn't exist either? We see abolition, the policing, prisons, jails, abuses that occur within prisons, but also... Hold on, wait, I'm sorry, I skipped a line, I'm sorry. Jails and detention not strictly as narrow of an answer to imprisonment and abuses that occur in prisons, but also as a challenge to the rule of poverty, violence, racism, alienation, and disconnection that we face every day. Abolition is not just about closing doors to violence institutions, but also about building up and recovering institutions and practices and relationships that nurture wholeness, self-determination, and transformation. Abolition is not some distant future, but something we can create in everyday movements, in everyday moments, when we have no say to the traps of empire, and yes, to the nourishing possibilities, dreams of and practiced by our ancestors and friends. Every time we insist on accessible and affirming healthcare, safe and quality education, meaningful and secure employment, loving and healing relationships, and being our whole selves, we are doing abolition. Abolition is about breaking down things that oppress and build up those things that nourish. Abolition is the practice of transformation in the here, in the now, and the ever after. Maybe wrestling with such a significant demand is the wake-up call that an increasingly sleepy LGBT movement needs. The true potential of queer and trans politics cannot be found in attempting to reinforce our tenuous right to exist by undermining someone else's. If it is not clear already, we are all in this together to claim our legacy of beautiful impossibility is to begin practicing ways of being with one another and making movement that sustain all life on this planet without expectation. It is to begin speaking what we have not yet had the words to wish for. That's it. That's the whole shebang, friends. Whew. That was a lot of fun. Everyone stretch. But yeah, that's pretty much the whole crux of it, right? Is you gotta understand your material conditions and understand the material conditions of others in your community and other communities that you share communities with, and also communities that you gotta think on a more global scale, my friend. You gotta think on a more global scale. You have to understand that everyone's survival will also mean your survival, and your survival will mean everyone else's survival. That's kind of the dealio in this situation, and it's very easy to identify that the police-industrial complex is very detrimental to people's very survival, and it very much targets a ton of people groups. A lot of people will immediately point to that it harms white men sometimes. And yeah, it's true, it does. But at the same time, those white men, either they are part of some militia and, they, were forced to be, confronted by the police intervention, which, like, for example, in fucking the Jan 6 riot that they got going on there, the police were obligated to protect the Capitol buildings, which they failed to do, and they also were in on the whole shebang. Not to mention that one of those police officers are QAnon conspiracy people, and, like, for example, the president of the police union in New York PD is also a conspiracy, QAnon boob. No, whatever. But it's just like, like, we can't assimilate with a police state, really. It doesn't work that way. We can't really, like, exist in the same world as something that is built to sustain, the reaping of resources that we need to sustain ourselves, and it, turns itself into a hierarchical class structure that ends up kind of, perpetuating the violence that we receive on a day-to-day basis. So that's why, like, when a lot of people say, like, Vosh saying trans rights in chat, it doesn't really, erase the transphobia that sometimes Vosh has, or, like, I remember one time Vosh also, like, fucking, had one of our friends on who is indigenous, and then they had a really good conversation, and then he came back on the show, and that shit just went, bananas, because Vosh, like, eventually had an argument with him, and then they bullied him off of Twitter, and yeah, they just called him savage and, like, in the DM, and said really racist shit about indigenous folks. So that's why, like, I'm very skeptical of Vosh. I'm very skeptical of people who want to reform the state into something that is kind of nicer, but not really. I don't really like the idea of existing under a capitalist framework that, doesn't give me the basics that I need to survive. I hate to bag on Vosh again, but one of the things he said was that if we shouldn't live under socialism if it means, detrimenting, our basic, utilities and survival, or, the things that make, the quality of life good. The thing is that the quality of life under capitalism is fucking atrocious. And the idea of socialism is, especially anarcho-communism, or anarcho-socialism, or anarcho-syndicalist praxis, if you will, is to create a good quality of life for everyone. And not just, like, the state, that you want us to be in, like, some transitionary state for. But that's getting into some anarchism versus Marxism, Leninism, Maoism debates there, and I don't want to get into that today. But more importantly, I just want to make sure that what you're doing in your community is critical and important. Like, when you participate in, food distributions, or needle exchanges, or, at, like, your local health center, when you are, providing, like, a service to the community, you're doing a real material good, but you're also leading an example that other people can actually start to pick up on and participate in themselves. You don't need some superhero to, or some mascot. I mean, I got the ears. You don't need some mascot to tell you that you don't need some mascot to tell you that you gotta do some mutual aid in your community. You know what I'm saying? You don't need some mascot to tell you to go do some work and help your community. And I know a lot of you are gonna say that now I am not able to do things because I am unemployed and disabled. I'm with you there, friends. I'm in the same boat as you. Trust me, I am. But you got friends, people care, people will help, ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You know what I'm saying? Don't be afraid to ask for people to listen to your turmoil, your trauma. I mean, you know, obviously within boundaries, of course. Not everyone owes you their time of day, but ultimately expressing your trauma and expressing what your needs and necessities are, you can get people to help you, and eventually, you know, it'll drive you to want to help others. You know, like when you're able to help others, you know, and that's the best part about it, is that the world is very dark and very hard, but this is like, you know, anarchism, in my opinion, it's like the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, it's like a light that's at the end of the tunnel, because like like we've been talking about, anarchism is a framework. It is a framework that helps us analyze the hierarchical structures that are in our lives, whether it is justified dominance or not, and we then come to the conclusions as to whether or not it is justified by achieving our mutual benefit, or if it is not justified by exploiting the dominated. So I'm gonna read the chat, and then we'll say Betty bye. Sure, y'all been talking and having a good old time. All right, let's see where we left off. I was listening yesterday when peeling up a floor. Damn, I've done that work before. That sounds awful. I hope you're okay. I hope you didn't cut yourself at all. Hey, I think they are on Crunchyroll as well. Are you talking about One Piece, or are you talking about the other two medias that VCAR were talking about? I can check Crunchyroll. I don't have Crunchyroll, but I got places I'll check. I'll Google it and whatnot. Anime is kind of my thing, so I'll check them out. Matthew, we should definitely check them out together. Actually, if you're able or willing to, we can hang out in the Discord and have an anime night where we check these two out. Is it safe? It's safe now. We're just chilling now. I'm very sorry. It got rough. I will, from now on, if I ever read this book again, I will put a trigger warning for some of the things that it covers. It is this book has demonstrated to be very heavy at times. So if I ever read from that book again, I'll put a warning on the bottom, and I'll put a warning in the beginning. Anyway, that was really good. What I was able to hear. Thank you for reading that. Absolutely, I'm glad that you enjoyed reading that you enjoyed listening to me read this. And like I said, I will do what I can to put up a warning next time we tune in. Sent the link to the Discord, how the Irish became white, to Discord. You can download it for free as a PDF. Thank you, Tempest. I appreciate it. And thank you for the excellent read. Absolutely, friends. Like I said, you can support me by using the links in the description. You can buy my music and hang out at my fan page, and you can go on to Twitch that me and Matthew run. And then also there's a Discord down there. Y'all are invited to hang out. So anyway, that's it.